Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Feeding the Family. I am your host, Jill Trotterman. So today we're going to be talking about how we think, how we feel, and how we experience food. And how we experience that is very different for all people. But what about the role of how our emotions, our desires, and our quest for feeling better impacts our dietary habits? In a new study, they show that children who eat healthier diets have better emotional states of mind and have more confidence. So today we're going to be talking about the role of psychology and nutrition and how they intersect. So today I'm going to welcome into the studio a very special guest. Her name is Ephi Morphew-Lu, and Ephi has spent the last 17 years supporting the systematic development of a new field of study connecting the psychological and nutritional sciences referred to as nutritional psychology. Her journey began in 2008 when she developed and taught the first university-level course in nutritional psychology at JFK University. These courses grew into a 7-course certificate program training mental health and allied health professionals until early 2020. In 2015, she co-founded the Center for Nutritional Psychology, a non-profit educational organization that houses the world's research exploring the connection between nutrition and psychological health. Today, CNP houses thousands of studies informing our understanding of the connections between nutrition and psychology, providing continuing education for mental health and nutrition professionals approved by the American Psychological Association, the Commission on Dietetic Registration, and other large credentialing organizations. And CNP's bold mission is to ensure that by 2030, nutrition becomes a systematically recognized and integrated component of mental health worldwide. And during her personal time, if she has any, Ephi is a wife, a mom of 2 teenagers, and a fabulous poodle named General Patton. And she finds peace in her garden with the General and spends much of her internal free time daydreaming about when mental health professionals can hold the space to formally support their clients' diet, mental health, relationship. That is amazing. You are a busy lady.
Well, thank you for all that. Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome.
It's exciting.
I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you.
And I came across you, and we had, I think you were just halfway through starting this program.
Yes.
And now it's really evolved into something quite magnificent. Now it's something very unique that you're doing. Most people are not starting a new field of study. This is a huge undertaking.
Well, sometimes thinking of it that way, it does sound like a grand plan. It's not something that I originally started out thinking about doing. It just sort of naturally happened. My first career was in aerospace psychology. Excuse my voice, by the way. I'm overcoming a cold. I started out in aerospace psychology. I was working for NASA. That was my dream career. And I was in my late 20s. My health was not very good. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in my early 20s, and it made getting through college and graduate school very, very difficult. So I was exploring all sorts of treatments, including medication, and it was becoming very clear to me by my late 20s that I was not doing well on these medications. They were not solving my issues. So I became very interested in learning about how I could use food as a tool to help my body, to help my autoimmune disorder. So I started researching. That was my area of interest, was doing research in psychology. And so I started turning those interests to food. And I thought there's got to be a connection between food and mood and food and brain function. Now this was, 20 years ago. This was back when all of this was not really understood, and the thought of having to prove that there's a connection between what we eat And our mental health and physical health, that was still a little bit, people knew. They knew that there's a physical connection. You eat healthy and you tend to be more healthy. But it was really not considered until a little bit later that mental health would play a role. So I started collecting studies, and at the time, the only studies connecting food, any kind of food, with brain function and mental health were tryptophan studies. And that's the amino acid found in foods. And so I became very interested in this area. I went down to half time with my job with NASA. It was my dream career, working for NASA. It was very, very exciting. But because of health reasons, I needed to go down to half time. And I thought I need to save myself. So how is it that I can do that? So I went back to school, to community college actually, and I took a couple years of pre-nursing, physiology and anatomy. And then I actually went into a holistic nutrition program for 2 years and got a diploma. And then I started being a nutrition educator and working with clients. And I started noticing things that people were really not eating very well. I used to do food journals, hundreds of them. And I would notice that people would just eat gluten and dairy all day long. So,
Okay, so you're sharing with your experience of being on this journey, and you were fascinated by the connection between when you're experiencing your own physical problems, you had the time to think about how is food impacting mental health.
yes,
And so people were doing studies on tryptophan. And that was the main thing because from even till this day, I think that serotonin is made in the gut, and tryptophan, 5-HTP are precursors to serotonin. And so there's a lot of studies done, I guess, initially on that one food amino acid. However, there are so many other ways that food and different foods impact our brain. And I think you were sharing with about that people were coming in and their diets were consisting of gluten and dairy. And so those are super highly, I know what you're going to call them, highly palatable. And are they hedonic? Is that like because they're nurturing and they're sweet and they remind us of being nurtured? So is that part of our human brain that we seek out naturally things that are going to soothe us to calm ourselves down, like self-medicating through food, essentially?
yes. Well, you mentioned hedonic eating. That's a different thing.
Okay.
Just because something has gluten or dairy in it doesn't mean it's highly palatable.
Okay, good to know.
Gluten and dairy foods don't necessarily equate to highly palatable, and they don't necessarily lead to hedonic eating.
Good to clarify.
Yes, so we can talk about each of those individual factors at some point. But the gluten and dairy thing, one of the things that we've learned through collecting these thousands of studies is that people tend to eat what's available around them. There's a new study that we just published on our website about availability. Just think of it this way. If food is available to you, you'll eat it. Also, our social circles. There's many reasons we eat what we eat. Also, there are foods, a class of foods that are designed to be highly palatable, which have high sugar, salt, fat together in the same type of food, and those strike up different changes in our gut microbiome and our reward centers of our brain and switch us from eating from a more homeostatic nutrient supplying approach to eating for reward for that dopamine hit. There are two different it's a different center of the brain, and that's one of the issues with today's food that tends to be highly available and highly hedonic producing. So it's hyper palatable with way pumped up salt, way pumped up sugar, pleasure. People are going for pleasure and that taste bomb now. And we've come very far from eating foods that are simply to nurture our body, which sometimes aren't that exciting. It comes down to basically vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, meats, fish. And hundreds of different types of vegetables, different types of meats, but it's harder to get a whole foods-based diet today because of the availability of palatable foods.
Right, so that's really fascinating. So you're sharing about the mere fact that we have such accessibility not only to really super healthy foods that are good for us, these simple foods you're talking about, just the basic foods in our food system, but we have manufactured them currently to be the highly palatable ultra processed foods. In our current day, we have an abundance of food to choose from. Now, simple foods like you were talking about, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, those are the foods that have been on our planet, and meats for our whole entire being humans. But nowadays, the manufacturers can create different foods that are highly palatable and create cravings. Can you share about what happens in a person's brain? Like what's going on with families and kids now when parents go to the grocery store and sure they can choose this aisle that's healthier, but then all the aisles in the middle maybe aren't so balanced. What's going on in a person's brain when they're exposed to so many different kinds of processed foods?
Yes, well, it turns out that's what we're mapping out at CNP. We're consolidating all the research that looks at what happens to different brain regions with different types of foods. And with hyperpalatable foods, that's high in salt, sugar, and fat, what's happening is it's activating different brain regions that are making changes in our appetite, our learning and memory centers of our brain, and actually training us very rapidly. There's some studies on our website. Richard Stevenson is one of my favorite researchers in this area, where he looks at the effects of, for example, adding 4 days of just one hyperpalatable meal. I believe it was waffles, a waffle added to a person's regular diet, a waffle with lots of syrup and ice cream on top, just simply adding that for 4 days. And then they do studies on the hippocampus in our brain. The hippocampus is responsible for learning and memory. And so what they found, and they've done this repeatedly, is they found that our learning, after 4 days of being introduced to hyperpalatable foods like that, our learning and memory processes specifically are impacted. Now, when I first heard about this, I thought, what does memory have to do with food? It turns out learning and memory and different cognitive processes go into our choices. What we learn is something that we want and like, and what we remember gave us an experience, something that we want to replicate. And remember, we are animals. And so when we eat extremely palatable food, now there can be really tasty, palatable food that's super healthy. We all know if we go out to a special restaurant that, is very much organic and prepares things a certain way, that's fine. That's very tasty food. But in general, particularly in the research community, when we talk about hyper palatable foods, we're talking about highly processed to be inclusive of a high amount of sugar, salt, and fat together at the same time, and then artificial ingredients. And so those actually go into a different physiology in the body. Those go straight to the mesocortical limbic dopamine reward system in the brain. And it's a system. This is how we're trying to educate psychologists and mental health professionals and dietitians, because a lot of them aren't aware of this information, of the specifics of neuroscience, of what is happening when we eat certain classes of foods, as well with our gut microbiome. It turns out John Cryan's work, he's one of the preeminent researchers in microbiome, there are studies to show, for example, fascinating studies, if you extract bacteria from the microbiome of rats that are bred to be obese, and you extract that, are you familiar with this?
Yeah, this is amazing. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and you extract the components of the microbiome, the microbiota, they call it, the bacteria, and you implant it into thin strained mice, you're going to change those mice and make it's obesogenic for them. So you can also do this with social nature. One of the interesting things that I found is in starting my journey with probiotics, I noticed that I started to become more social. And I thought, okay, now I've really done it. This is crazy. This is impossible. But I had been on a certain set of probiotics for a couple years, and I noticed I started having parties. I started getting a lot more social.
Okay.
And then I started thinking there's got to be something related to my microbiome. And then lo and behold, a study gets published, and there are studies now that show that you can isolate social strains of bacteria associated with more social behavior. And then if you implant them into antisocial mice and rats, they become more social. And so it's basically top down. The food that we're eating, we're rewiring our brain and our gut. And as you know, they're connected.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Now, is it the bacteria themselves that have the properties of obesogenic or sociability, or is it that that when you're incorporating different bacteria, it's displacing all the bad bacteria, and so you're naturally supposed to be that way?
It's actually what the good bacteria are doing. It's what that particular strain of bacteria is doing in communicating through the vagus nerve to the brain and enacting certain brain regions.
I've also heard that, tell me if this is true, because you're dispelling some myths here. Can you be in a person's presence, and if they have dysbiosis or imbalanced microbiome, can that come into your field and be influenced?
Well, I think that
from breath or from sweat, like does those bacteria emanate out of a person's body and impact others?
Right. I don't know, but what I do know is that families share, and it's because we, use similar parts of the house. We eat off the same plates. I do believe, but I have not looked at the research specifically in this area.
Okay.
But I do believe, so for example, my family and I, we've all gone through full GI testing, specialized GI testing, and strangely, we have similar gut mapping for our microbiome. But that is not steeped in science. I don't know. That's an N of one of my personal opinion. But I sense that we share microbial communities with the people in close contact with us. It makes sense.
It does. So you do a lot of research in your field. That's what you're spending a lot of your time on. And your hopes are to influence psychologists.
Yes. Well, I actually don't do the research myself.
You have a team of brilliant people that are on your staff.
We have a team, and our team's job is, as research is published in the world that helps us understand in some way, shape, or form how food is affecting our mood, our brain, our gut, we're on it. We have alarms and bells and whistles, daily we're scouring. And when a study comes out that we believe belongs in the field of nutritional psychology, meaning it connects food and diet, nutrition with mental health and psychological health, we identify that study, we review that study, we summarize that study, and then we make that study more palatable. We, no pun intended, most people don't have time, most clinicians, boots on the ground people don't have time, even researchers don't have time to read other people's research, certainly not entire studies and hundreds of them. And so we believe one of the barriers in connecting the nutritional and psychological sciences with each other, in other words, having dietitians and nutritionists talking with mental health professionals and cross-training with each other, is that they simply don't have access. It's one thing to have a really great study published and have it go through the news cycle for about 5 minutes, but as a professional, you're not going to have time to not only really sit there with that study, read that study, and then put that study into the context, a larger conceptualization that makes sense in terms of understanding the relationship, the conceptualized and evidence-based relationship between nutrition and mental health. So that is what we specialize in. That's what we do. So some of us are researchers, but for example, I am not a researcher. As the executive director, my job is to identify studies that belong into the conceptualization of this new field of study, nutritional psychology,
Great.
and then do things with it
Right.
that bring it onto a menu and make it accessible.
Right. That's the goal. There's so many people who are struggling. I started my work off working in the mental health field.
Tell me more.
I worked with severely emotionally disturbed pregnant teenagers with drug and alcohol addiction.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were in a lockdown facility, and gosh, those women, those young girls, they would smoke cigarettes, eat all kinds of junk food because they had exposure to the cafeteria with soda, and I think they would have had better health outcomes with their children and the connection to the babies. Most of the kids were adopted out, but some of the kids kept kids. But those were a fragile population.
Yes.
Now with the bigger variety of the whole world, so what are some current what are you learning right now? Like what's hot in the psychology field? Like, are there some mind-blowing things that are coming out that you're reading about?
Well, I would
Not
say,
to put you on the spot,
yeah,
but
I would say that one of the things that we're doing is we're trying it. Everybody kind of has a sense that what they're eating is influencing their mental health and
Okay.
how they feel. A lot of people not everyone, a lot of people kind of know that. But the problem is okay, prove it. And how? What are the mechanisms? So at CNP, we're really into mechanisms. Explain deeper to us what's actually happening physiologically in the gut, in the mind. So, going deeper than the news articles, that there's a connection between diet and mental health.
right.
One of the things that always for years, I've been watching the news cycles for years related to this topic. And one of the things that would really drive me nuts would be probably until about 3 years ago, there would be an interview and an expert of some kind would be interviewed, maybe a psychologist, psychiatrist, MD, and the interviewer would say, is there a connection between what we eat and mental health? And invariably, in that news article, they would cite one obscure study or two and say there's not enough to make a connection, to prove a connection, that there's a connection between diet and mental health. And that used to frustrate me because we, since 2015, have been collecting piles and piles of published peer-reviewed research that is in all corners of the earth, that nobody is getting to see, that when you put it together, you see that absolutely our food, we are in a relationship with the food we eat.
Right.
We don't realize, we think about food all day long. Try an experiment tomorrow or today after you listen to this. Notice yourself, catch yourself throughout your day. Might be kind of hard the first day or the second day because we don't think about what we're thinking about, a lot of us. Metacognition, but try and think about what you're thinking about throughout the day regarding food, because what you'll realize is that we're all in a relationship with food. It's constantly. And now food noise, I was very excited actually when that term food noise, that means obtrusive thoughts thinking about food. It was actually born out of the researchers who were working on Wegovy and the GLP-1 inhibitors. They have coined a term named food noise, that it assists with food noise. Now, I'm not here to say, to comment on that, but food noise, I have food noise.
Who doesn't have food noise?
Yeah, I have food noise. And
Okay.
the more I talk to people about food noise, it's not just me. And then sometimes I think, okay, as the executive director of CNP, and the co-founder, I should not have food noise. But I have food noise every day. It's good. My food noise is low until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And
Okay.
I know in functional medicine we can look into like, okay, there's reasons why, and blood sugar, maybe not enough breakfast, but I have food noise, and then I have food noise at night.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, so you're saying food noise is a negative because I'm wondering in the animal world, do squirrels and bears have food noise? Once the bear broke into the house and he got his paws on some snack food, he has food noise.
Yeah.
He has your address and he's coming to your
Yes,
door
yeah.
for dinner.
Yeah. Well, I would beg to say that food noise is a good thing for the bear population
for
and
the
the
bear.
animal population.
But for humans, it could be obtrusive.
Absolutely.
Or intrusive, or both.
Yes, absolutely.
So we want to have so what would be, is there positive food noise and negative food noise? So if I'm thinking like, oh, I can't wait to have that kale salad, I'm going to put some walnuts, I'm going to put some Parmesan cheese, I might throw some sliced apples, and that's going to be so tasty.
Yes.
Is that a healthy food noise versus I'm starving, I haven't eaten in 8 hours, I don't have time to cook, I have nothing in the fridge, I'm ordering a pizza.
Right.
What kind of pizza am I going to get?
I think.
Like, what's the difference between that?
Right. I've thought about that a lot and read a
Because
lot.
that did happen this week.
That did happen.
I'm confessing.
Okay. Well, I mean, part of it has to do with blood sugar. And now we're starting additionally to get into the topic of interoception. So there's something called interoception.
Okay, you're going to have to break that down.
Okay.
I do have a vocabulary list that I have on my website that I saved from your organization.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's a whole dictionary
Nice.
of psychology terms with food.
I love that. That sounds like the Encyclopedia of Nutritional Psychology.
100%.
Yes.
Yes, because, I'm a super fan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're a nerd fan.
I am.
You're
I
all
love
in.
it. I am excited about this topic.
You're all in. But yes.
So interoception.
Interoception. Yes. Interoception is running your life. It's in your life all day long, all night long, and you don't even know it. Interoception is your internal sensations in your body in this case, in the case of nutritional psychology, we have sensations all day long related to food in our body, in our insides. Think of craving. What does it feel like to crave something? Next time, for example, you got to get that pizza. I mean, that's going to happen. It's just going to happen. What that means is that you waited a little bit too long, and that happens because we're busy. But you waited too long, and all of your internal sensations related to your nervous system, you're having a lot of physical sensations. Most people are not aware of these physical sensations. Then, if you have really reinforced your dopamine reward system, your mesocortical limbic dopamine pathway, which is that part of your brain that responds to highly palatable foods, the sugar, almost like an addiction like. And if it's kind of in question whether food addiction exists, but it's coming online. That's kind of a hot area.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure that's fascinating for people to dive into. I'm sure a lot of industries don't want that to come out.
No, I'm sure probably not, because that hits the profit margin.
Indeed.
That goes against their food product.
Right.
So, but now,
when you're having that craving, like I couldn't get it out of my mind, like I have to get a pizza, I'm obsessing, even though I knew I could go to the store and buy some food or go to my garden and pick something.
Yes, because you're looking for that hedonic type of different reward system, mesocortical limbic dopamine reward system in the brain that's been hyper energized. Now, a question for you. How much do you eat hyper palatable food, like cookies, cakes, chips? I mean, this is a personal question.
Sure. Well, gosh.
You don't have to answer.
This is very personal. Provoking. And I'm going to have people wait because I'm going to put us on a short 2-minute break.
Okay. Ooh.
So if you guys want to know what my snack habits are, you're going to have to wait. All right, hold on tight. We'll be right back.
Time to enter your best in this year's Santa Cruz County Fair. A hobby collection, favorite pie, cookies, photography, art projects, flowers, fruits and vegetables, quilts, Legos, and more. Most entries close August 21st. Entry information is available online at santacruzcountyfair.com, and while you're there, take advantage of pre-sale ticket packages at santacruzcountyfair.com, and we'll see you at
the Santa Cruz County Fair.
I've got a question for you. Do you want a lower car payment just by making a phone call? You know, most people buy a car and they pay whatever the car dealer says their interest rate is, and they forget about it and make payments. But did you know there is a secret in your contract that allows another company to refinance any car payment to try and lower it? It's true. There is indeed a company out there that knows the ins and, more importantly, the outs on car loans, and they know how to lower your current car payments. It's easy and fast, and you could have a lower car payment next month. Make this free call right now and find out if you could lower your existing car payment. Call the Car Savings Hotline right now. The call is free.
Call now, 800-471-4435, 800-471-4435, 800-471-4435. That's 800-471-4435.
Attention content producers. You can have access to a complete digital media production facility at Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Easily rent video and audio equipment, a studio with green screen, editing suite, and audio booth, all at can't say no rates. Schedule a tour to see for yourself at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Okay, folks, hello and welcome back. This is Jill Trotterman with Feeding the Family. We are streaming from Santa Cruz, California on santacruzvoice.com. In the studio, I have with me the fabulous Ephi-Lu, and she is the co-director of CNP. And we are talking about... Our latest thing we were just talking about is what food cravings really get us going and how often are we eating highly palatable food. So, of course, I'm going to lie right now.
Yes, because I think what we're really talking about right now is
Yes.
Before the break, we were asking you what snacks you eat.
I know. Okay, so my biggest snack favorite is chocolate. Like if it's in a brownie, a cookie,
Yes.
something like that. And chocolate does have some good polyphenols and
Yes.
antioxidants, so it is a little bit healthy, but not when it's a super sugary chocolate.
Right.
And so I did get chocolate from a grocery store that everybody knows. So I think I need to get a really darker chocolate. Sometimes I'll have a nut with it.
Yes.
So some almonds or walnuts, and I will choose a walnut if I want some essential fatty acids, or I'll choose almonds if I want something more alkalizing,
Yes.
because I'm trying to pay attention to my pH balance. So those are the things that are going through my mind. Honestly, if I'm making a sandwich, I definitely want potato chips, but I really try not to.
Yeah. When you go out, do you ever go out to restaurants and then you feel like you're exposed to hyperpalatable foods?
100% all the time. In fact, on another podcast, I was lamenting on these French fries that we are eating, and I often go out with my folks to eat, and they might want to get some fried food, and everybody loves fried food. Who doesn't?
Right.
I think we would all eat it every day if we could, but we all know. So, Effie, what happens when we cognitively know not to have potato chips because of the acrylamide or it's fried?
Right. Well,
versus our, gosh, I just want to eat some. And sometimes it's fine because we don't want to have an eating disorder. So maybe some days
right.
we should indulge.
That's right.
So when is that, where's that happy medium? As nutritionists, we know, but we still give in.
Right. Well, remember how I talked a little bit earlier about availability?
Yes.
If food is available in your environment, you will eat it.
Okay.
So I have a long-standing theory. It has not been demonstrated in science, but in reviewing all these studies over the last 17 years, I have a theory. You know, the whole restricted eating thing,
Yes.
and the concern about withholding
100%.
and restraining food.
Yes.
I feel at this point, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about this. I think about this, that there's a mediator. There is an elephant in the room, and a mediator, something that is driving a wedge that is making us cycle from back and forth between restricted eating, no, I can't have that, to sort of gorging or binging. And I'm not talking about anorexia or bulimia in terms of full clinical disorder. I'm talking for regular people. For me, I don't know for you if
For
this
me
speaks
too.
to you.
Yeah, it does.
Right. And I think the elephant in the room, the mediator, is availability. There is so much, the accessibility and availability of hyperpalatable foods has been like never before. It just keeps escalating.
Yes.
And what that does is that strains, talking about nutritional psychology, our executive functioning abilities, because our choice and our decision making no longer becomes, okay, would I like an apple or an orange? Native type of eating.
Right.
They didn't have to make these choices. Now, when I walk into a grocery store, the amount of colors and the amount of choices, it makes the basic standard diet become less and less appealing. So, you're not going to binge out on chicken and broccoli necessarily. And by the way, I'm not an eating disorder specialist. So if I say anything that is not accurate in that area, please call me on it.
Okay.
But I really do believe that the availability of all of these hyperpalatable foods, which we now know through neuroscience, have very powerful effects on different regions. They know the specific regions, specifically what's happening in the gut microbiome. These foods have powerful effects that entrain eating behavior to influence mental health outcomes. So I believe that the real key here is accessibility and availability. That pizza is accessible. And in a way, if you back out the logic and the experience of what happened to you, because you know at some level subconsciously that the pizza's available, it's like a cat, it catches you where you're like, okay, I have an out, and that out is usually processed food. If you don't plan and cook. And of course, planning and cooking, it's expensive. It requires a lot of executive functioning. And so there's no judgment on, eating highly accessible, highly palatable foods. It's a systemic issue.
It's
the way
systemic in our society.
Yes.
And if people aren't using their executive functioning to make those good rational decisions between choosing an apple or an orange, we're being thwarted by these other foods because of the accessibility. So that's the elephant in the room, is accessibility. And so our society is overloaded. We're set up for failure then, it
Yes.
seems.
Well, when you're talking about executive functioning.
Yeah, what happens without the executive functioning when we...
That's right.
Yeah, let's
So,
go there.
our prefrontal cortex in our brain is what is responsible for executive functioning. The ability to plan, the ability to schedule, the ability to make decisions. That is a prefrontal cortex activity. Remember the mesocortical limbic dopamine reward system in the brain, the different region?
In the hippocampus?
That's a different.
That's a different
doesn't
part.
include the hippocampus.
Okay.
It's a whole region in the brain of a cluster of different ventral tegmental area, different terms you don't need to know that are neuroscience. But what you do benefit from knowing is that this region, when it is active, you are not in your prefrontal cortex.
I see.
So hence the pizza. Once you start eating the pizza, you absolutely cannot stop eating the pizza because that's more hyper palatable. So it's competing brain regions.
Does this have to do with something with survival? Like, is it hitting on something?
I'd have to think about that
I'm just thinking
to
about,
answer that.
Like, I just keep going back like thousands of years where people struggling with their executive functioning when they were trying to figure out where their next meal was coming from. Or is this all new that we're dealing with in these modern...
Well, the newness comes from the availability.
The novelty foods.
Yes, if these foods were available back in caveman days, I would argue that, once the caveman tasted that, they would eat it, and they
Right.
would go for it, and they would find it.
But there must be a part of our brain that is there for a reason, that we are, like we do have.
Yes, motivation and
Moti-
reward. That's
That's
what
it.
drives behavior. It's a good thing.
So that goes back to the dopamine and the pleasure centers of our brain. So we're
Yes.
trying to self-soothe in some way.
Yes. And what
And
happens?
that's a survival thing.
You're right.
Okay, so we're so excited, we're so overstimulated, and our adrenals are going crazy, and the pizza, because we're hungry, I'm just using that as an example now, might calm us down. And if we had other ways in our executive functioning to mitigate that and to say, you're having an overwhelmed situation, have some water and some tea, go do some meditation, and then calm down, and then go eat the apple and the orange.
That's tough.
But that's
hard.
hard.
That's
to
really,
do.
really hard. I did an experiment, a couple team members and I did an experiment a couple years ago. This was before a lot of the research. There's so much research that's come out in the last couple of years. This was before we had such a good handle on what's actually happening here with internal sensations that we experience when craving a food. By the way, Food Lab, quick Food Lab for all of you, including you, Jill.
Yes.
We like little Food Labs.
Okay, let's hear it.
Food Lab is the next time that you are experiencing a strong drive for a hyperpalatable food. Okay, this is going to be hard. I want you to stop, recognize that you're having that drive for the piece of more than chocolate, something like cookies, or you smell pizza. Stop and sit with your body and just sit and allow yourself, force yourself to experience what is it that's happening in your body. Like, what does that feel like? And so I did that experiment. One of my colleagues did that experiment. This is out of the research world. This is,
Yeah.
more in the just personal experimentation
I know
world.
you had a clipboard with you.
Yeah, yes. And I remember the sensations that I had. I don't have a diagnosis with, and I don't believe that I have disordered eating. But so I could just consider myself sort of like just a regular person without a diagnosis in this area. Nothing, all in that, average of the bell curve. It was extremely difficult for me to sit there and restrain, that's not a good word because that's technically used in the eating disorder community, to withhold. And what I experienced internally and interoceptively was what I would call anxiety, and I wanted to cry at some point.
Okay.
And just holding that space. And I didn't want to cry for psychological, I wanted to cry because resisting that urge of, okay, it was time for chocolate, or it was time for a brownie. There's brownies. Someone baked brownies in my house and I smell it. Now this starts to get into the diet sensory perception relationship. If we smell it, if we hear it, we are likely to also eat it as well. So as you know, hyperpalatable foods usually come with high smells. For example, you walk in the mall, what is that? Oh, that cookie place or the waffle or the Cinnabon.
Right.
When you walk into the mall and you smell Cinnabon, that is your interoceptive experience is on overdrive. When you smell that, you are likely, it's available, you are likely going to want it. It's the same thing like when you sit in a movie theater and you say to yourself, I'm not going to get popcorn. And the trailers come on, 15, 20 minutes of trailers. And then the trailer, there's Nicole Kidman, and then there's the trailer where,
Yeah, exactly.
with popcorn.
Yeah.
And you hear it and you see the bubbling Coca-Cola and you watch that. And invariably, I have been known to stand right up and go and get myself some popcorn. I didn't necessarily need it before. I told myself I don't need popcorn. But now, after being exposed, sensory perception is also at play here.
Right.
So
we're seeing things, we're hearing things,
Yes.
we're smelling things.
And we're feeling things.
And I know the marketers, the food manufacturer marketing people, spend hours analyzing, for instance, in the cereal aisle, which really there's not much food going on, like nutrition-wise, in that aisle. I don't
Right.
think. I haven't been into that aisle in decades. I don't even know. I should probably go and take a walk through. But on all of those commercials, on the boxes, they have figured out the exact angle of where the child's eye would be walking down the aisle and Tony the Tiger's eyes are, where they match.
Yes.
And so when a kid is walking down that aisle, all of those cartoon characters are glaring at them with those big excitable eyes.
Yes.
So what's going on there? So those children now are going, I'm not really hungry for that food, but that character looks so awesome and I want to be with that guy. And then they probably see it on TV. Is that what's going on with the brain in that case?
That's what we call the diet sensory perceptual relationship.
Okay, so it's a perception.
Yes. So for those of you who are, have a degree in psychology, you studied sensation and perception.
Right, yes.
So sensation and perception, that actually has been the research in this area. It is in the psychological sciences and neuroscience, but it is also in marketing science. They love this area. And every time we come across a study from marketing folks, a published study, we love it because we know that they're on to understanding how to drive human behavior based on capturing sensory properties and perceptual properties. The most simple example is, for example, plate size. Depending on the plate size, that will change the amount of food you eat. The person, now we're going to get into the diet psychosocial relationship. If you and I, we're going to go out to lunch after this, how much you decide to eat is going to subconsciously influence my eating rate and pace.
Fascinating.
And vice versa.
Right.
So as you can see, so far we've done, I think, a really good job. Thank you for illustrating all these factors at work. We have the diet cognitive relationship.
Yeah, what is that?
That is what we talked about with prefrontal cortex,
right.
executive functioning.
Right.
Turns out
That's our logic, our reason. So we could reason say, oh, no, I'm not going to have that. Because there are some foods that will come into my house.
Right.
I have zero desire to eat it.
Yes.
Even if it would be a quote unquote highly palatable food.
Like what?
Oh, plenty of junk food. Like
Yes.
I just wouldn't eat it.
Yes.
It doesn't, because it's not food to me. It would be like eating a can
Yes.
or dirt.
Right.
I'm
And
just
that's
not going to.
And that's really powerful. You're very lucky that you have that grounding base inside you, that you know that. For a lot of people who aren't, for most people who aren't trained in nutrition, or who haven't had personal experiences of poor health that have driven them to understand this, that if they eat that, they're going to suffer this way. That's what drove me to nutrition. It was trying to heal my own suffering, and medications were not helping.
Right.
And so I discovered food as a tool that, I learned exactly which foods would flare IBS. And I knew then it became an executive functioning choice. It became a decision once I had the education. And that's why we're trying to educate mental health professionals, is because they have no formal education. We just did a survey. And we also consolidated the research in the mental health profession and the nutrition profession. And we wanted to understand, what are the barriers? Why aren't these people talking, these professionals talking to each other? Why isn't it a thing that when you go to a mental health professional, they address, just like they would exercise, sleep, relationships, stress? Why is it that they don't address food? Well, we found out why. We consolidated all 4 of the research studies existing in the world on trying to answer this question. There were 4.
Only 4.
There was
That's
like 3 or
amazing.
4. Yeah.
Okay.
So we really, really dove into those, brought, several of our researchers on our team. We dove into those studies, consolidated them, and then we did our own survey. But in terms of the published surveys, what we found were there are barriers. First of all, there's no language. And that's why we're creating the Encyclopedia of Nutritional Psychology, because they have no common language to speak to each other.
Right.
Mental health professionals don't have an evidence-based, consistent language that's been informed through research, through which to discuss. Also, one thing that was really surprising to us was that mental health professionals feel, what is the word? They feel like they were comparing themselves a little bit to influencers, that they don't have, a super fit body.
Right.
Their image, who are they to be talking about the diet mental health
Right. They
relationship?
felt fraudulent
Yes.
or out of place, or it wasn't they weren't in their lane.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And so one of
Because
the
they might be struggling with their own eating issues. So they had to
That's
take a look
right.
at that. Like, how am I going to advise somebody
That's right.
about Diet Coke when I have a habit?
That's right. And
Understood.
What
Yeah.
what we say is that when you're educated, when they receive, for example, we have 150 hours at this point of evidence-based education that takes the blame out of this and explains the gut science and the neuroscience and explains what's happening to all of us. And we, if we do our job well, we are building out the mechanisms through which there can be interdisciplinary collaboration. And part of that will be helping mental health professionals understand that your clients and patients are not judging your body. If you have a solid understanding, evidence-based understanding of all the physiology and the psychology that's going on related to the nutritional spectrum and dietary spectrum that your client is eating, including yourself, it's not about judgment. It's about helping people understand in their own journey
For
with
sure.
how food can be influencing their own diet mental health relationship.
Yeah, it's like the missing piece.
We think so.
Yeah, it's like trying to fit somebody for sneakers without shoelaces.
Yes.
It's just going to keep falling off.
Yes. Now, something very interesting, I think this is new, and you would be interested in this, is
Okay.
it turns out attachment theory. Are you familiar with attachment theory?
In general,
Okay, right. In general.
In general.
Yes. So in general, the way that the attachments that a child forms in life, it turns out there are different types of attachments.
right? Secure attachment.
That's
or-
right.
Is that right?
Insecure. That's right.
Insecure.
It turns out, so we have an attachment specialist, psychologist, who has been working with us to consolidate the research in attachment and how that influences your later eating habits. And it turns out that it does. And so we've consolidated that research. There's a lot of studies to show that the attachment style that you formed in childhood with your caregiver, the bidirectional relationship.
Well, that's why I like Chinese food.
Why?
I was early influenced to like
Yeah.
Chinese food. So I'm just saying.
Yes.
That was my early training. But Ephi, also in the womb, if women are under eating when they're pregnant, they will produce children who will have a tendency to overeat.
Is that true?
Yeah. I'll send you the study on that.
Yes, I'd love to see
And
that.
so that's really fascinating too.
Yes.
That it's not just when we're born that we have these influences even in the uterus,
Yes.
like the influence of flavor preferences and different food preferences are influenced from the amniotic fluid and also from breast milk. So,
Yes. And the microbiome.
and the microbiome. So
Yes.
we're just being influenced all over, including our peers and our families and our
Yes.
loved ones.
Yes. A lot of different relationships going on in our life related to food
Right.
that most of us are largely unaware of.
Right. When we're unaware, what is that called? You're just
It's called being human. It's
just
called
being human.
it's just being human, unless you consciously study this stuff or are a neuroscientist or this is largely subconscious.
What can people do as we finish up our talk here? How can people navigate their food world knowing these things? Should we have that understanding that we're a complex system and that we are going to be influenced by these different perceptions that we're having, and how to employ and be friends with our executive functioning more?
I would say when you have, number one, when you have a craving and you're wanting to reach, you can feel that sensation, whether it's a buzzing, whether it's an anxiety, whatever it is, try and sit a little bit with that sensation.
Okay, like what you said, do your lab.
Yes, the food lab.
The
Do
food
a
lab.
food lab
Okay.
and say, what is it that I'm wanting and why?
Okay.
And ask yourself the question. Now, if you, this is not a plug for our curriculum, but if you take our curriculum, you'll understand this.
No, let's plug it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we have almost 150 hours of evidence-based education that we natively developed off of reading the thousands and thousands and thousands of research studies. Not our words. What we have done is consolidated what all of this research has shown. We don't provide opinions.
Okay.
We just provide that. But we have a new course coming out. It's not published yet, called NP320, and we have we now understand the neurobiological factors at play that determine eating behavior. So we talked a lot about the neuroscience of the dopamine reward system.
Right.
What actually is that and what is actually happening? So
Microbiome. So all of these different parts of our body are influencing.
yes. So we had an intern that just took the course, audited the course, and I asked him, what did you experience from taking NP320, the neurobiological aspects of eating behavior? And he said it kind of really changed things for me because I realized I now understand what's happening. Do I want that food?
Right.
And do I even like that food? Those are two different things, wanting and liking a
Right.
food. So stop yourself, say, what's happening? Okay, I'm really craving right now. Consider also that you maybe didn't, you could have done a better job with stabilizing your blood sugar with regular meals before that. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're craving. And another thing is keep in mind if you're going to go into an environment that's full of hyperpalatable foods or that's expected, like a birthday party, there's an expectation that you are going to eat cake. That's part because it's a birthday party.
It is. You will insult the host if you don't.
That's right. So you got to get clear for yourself. Is this actually going to harm me to eat birthday cake? So for people like me, it actually will. I'll
Right.
have secondary effects from eating that level of sugar and all that. So you have to work out your relationship with what you think is okay for
Right.
yourself. Be conscious about it. Be generous about it. You can put some different things on your plate if you feel socially awkward. Just even get the birthday cake. Then maybe you've got some fruit next to it or whatever. You can have some of the birthday cake if it doesn't affect you. But just know you don't automatically have to have the food that is available to you in your environment. You get to have agency.
Right. I think that's why they're trying to take all these foods out of kids, like birthday parties at schools, because there's like 30 birthdays a week.
But what they don't realize is the kids just stop at CVS on the way home.
Do they?
Well, at least my kids do.
You do. Okay. Well,
It's tough.
That's a
It's
whole
tough to get around it.
It is,
Yes.
and that's literally a whole nother conversation.
It
Like
is.
just the real practical life,
Yes.
because this is like super high level.
Yes.
Talking about this new field of nutritional psychology, which I just love.
Yeah.
But the practical things, which we did dip into,
Yes.
and how to influence our families and
Yes.
create positive things. And I know we're not going to go into this right now, but there was this study that I pulled off of your website, and I think I saw it floating around too, just about when people eat better, they have a better self-perception of themselves. They have higher self-esteem.
Yes. They
And-
also have higher performance in school.
Right. They have
Higher grades.
Higher grades.
Yes.
They have a lot of, different
Right.
things that positive outcomes in their lives.
Right. And when I first came across this published study, and I knew that we needed to get one of our researchers, professors, to summarize the study and make it into a CNP article in Nutritional Psychology, what I was left with was knowing that, okay, that is one piece of information, this study.
Okay. Yes.
This goes into the collective that there is so much research showing that food impacts our mental health and our children's mental health. The next step is we have to get it into undergraduate education
Right.
for the appropriate professionals, and then we have to get it into people's awareness of the biology and the physiology that is happening with food so that they can make informed choices that don't make them feel guilty, don't make them feel socially ostracized. That's the next step.
All right. We're going to normalize this field. I love it.
We hope so.
Yeah, well, I want to help get that out there.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you for being here, Ephi Morphew-Lu. No, I didn't say that right.
Morphew-Lu. Ephi Morphew-Lu.
Ephi Morphew-Lu. It's
Yes,
so-
or Ephi Lu for short.
Ephi Lu. That's how I know
Yes.
you originally. Well, it's so
Yes.
fabulous to have you here. And everyone check out CNP, the Center for Nutritional Psychology. I do believe you have membership, so if you're a professional,
Yes.
I highly recommend checking out their work. It's brilliant. And I hope schools are going to be adopting these programs soon. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jill.
I'm Jill Trotterman. This is Feeding the Family on Santa Cruz Voice. Peace out.